right, so welcome everybody. This is our first roundtable discussion, and it's for our upcoming holiday. So we'll get into what we call that holiday and also who everybody is. So some of these faces should be familiar and a few new ones. So let's go ahead and start by some introductions. Mark, do you want to start for us?
Sure. I'm Mark Green. I live in the California wine country, about 60 miles north of San Francisco. And I wrote a book called Atheopaganism, An Earth-Honoring Path Rooted in Science. And I'm the editor-in-chief of whatever that counts for, of the Atheopaganism blog at atheopaganism.org.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Mark.
Sure.
And I guess we'll just go in the order that I see everybody on the screen. I know Zoom always rearranges folks, but Hannah.
Hello, my name's Hannah Coy. I am coming at you here from Tucson, Arizona, in the back room of a friend's house where there's a live bluegrass band playing in the main room. So my apologies if there is some background sound, but as an atheopagan, I guess I'm a cleric at large, still trying to figure out what the best role for me is in those terms. And I'm on the media team. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, Hannah, and thank you for all your hard work on the media team as well. That's really appreciated.
Very welcome.
So, yeah. And Susan.
I'm gonna risk my video for right now. I've been having some glitches. That's why my screen's been off. My name is Susan, and there it goes again. And I live in the Midwest, the Great Lakes area. I identify as an atheopagan, but also a druid. I'm talking about that in some of my other videos that will have on the channel as well. I'm the media team glue on. My main role is to keep us organized and on track and make sure stuff happens, but I'm also going to be having some content too, hopefully. So excited to be here with everybody.
Yeah, thank you. This roundtable is happening because Susan made it happen, wrangled all of us, chased down our schedule. So we really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael, and I also live in the Midwest, although I grew up in Ireland, and I've been living in the US since 2013. So I'll be here 10 years in December. Wow. I'm on the Atheopagan Society Council as well, and I'm very interested in folklore and performing folkloric ritual and kind of things like this. So I'm very excited to talk about this particular topic.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. And I'm Yeka, and some of you may know me from The Wonder with Mark, so we do the podcast together. I'm on the council as well, and in my non-online life, am an ecologist and a science communicator, and a mom. So you might hear some kiddos in the background right now. So. All right, so thanks everybody. Well, I guess we should start with what is this holiday coming up? Because it can mean a lot of different things to different people. Yeah, does anyone want to jump in with that?
Well, I would say that for me, I think I'm in the position of a lot of potential people watching this video, which is I don't feel like I have a great handle on all of the holidays in the wheel of the year, especially the ones in between the equinoxes and the solstices. So this one in particular, Tucson, Arizona is not an especially cold place. And a lot of what I read about online is associated with this being sort of the cold time of the year, the winter doldrums. And it's really not that here. I mean, it is technically perhaps the coldest time of the year, but it's definitely not the doldrums. So yeah, I'm still working on getting a really specific way of appreciating and celebrating this holiday.
Mm.
I have sort of the opposite, not issue or problem, but for where I am, a lot of the classic imagery around this holiday of, the first hints of spring happening are really also not true. Here, it's like the darkest, deadest part of winter, not darkest literally in the amount of sunlight we get, but it's the coldest, it's the most snow, it's the least like spring it's gonna get. So it's just really very cold, dead of winter, and there's no hope really for us until middle of March of seeing springtime.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's the same for us. I'm in the desert Southwest, higher up than you, Hannah, though. So you're in the low desert, I'm in the high desert. So it gets really, really cold here, but not very wet. But this is the coldest month of the year. This is when it's truly winter for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about Michael, in your climate?
So I'll talk about two things. So first of all, in Ireland, the seasons start traditionally in a different way than they do in the US, and I think in continental Europe as well. So we kind of actually start them differently. So spring starts February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
That's the start of spring. And that's how we were taught in school. It's just, and so when I hear that there's an official start of winter in America, for example, I think, is it around the 21st? Is that when people say winter starts? I can't remember.
Yeah,
the
21st of
solstice.
December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our winter in Ireland would have started November 1st. So it's
That's
like
what it feels like.
Yeah. So spring
Yeah.
is February, March, April. Summer is May, June, July. Autumn is September, October, or sorry, August, September, October, and then winter is November, December, and January. So it really is the start of spring. We've got a very different climate up in Ireland as well, because of things like the Gulf Stream. You have a lot of the warm water and the warm currents coming up. So this holiday, when you see it, it's usually spelled Imbolc, and if you're using a traditional term. And when I did my interview with for the podcast a few months ago, I had mentioned about just the importance of knowing the names of things, and I think you have to realize as well that I think some people kind of reach backwards towards their ancestors when they look at things like this, without kind of interacting with the fact that the Irish language, for example, is a living language. It's not dead. This is a living tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So the word is pronounced with 3 syllables, and you can pronounce it in in two ways. So if you want to go with a more ancient pronunciation, you can say Imbolc. But if you want to use a modern pronunciation, the B sound drops, and it's Imbolc. And there's sort of kind of some grammatical reasons for that, which you can look at in your own terms. And often you'll see in books that the etymology that is given for Imbolc it comes from an ancient term, oy milk, meaning use milk.
Mm-hmm.
And this etymology comes from something called Cormac's Glossary, which was a book of etymologies from the Middle Ages. And in some ways, I've learned that Cormac's Glossary is kind of like the dad in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where he's like, give me a word and I will show you how it comes from Greek, And there's one scene where somebody says, okay, how about kimono? And he comes up with how kimono comes from Greek. And apparently the oy milk, use milk, is one of those. Maybe it's not quite right. And to a modern Irish ear, it doesn't sound authentic as well, because milk, I mean, that sounds kind of like the English milk, but the contemporary word for milk is
Banya.
Yeah. So the more authentic, and what most people I'm in contact with who are interested in this and from an Irish tradition, we do go for more of the Imbolc meaning, which means in the belly. So maybe kind of in utero. So we're still, it has that sense of, it's lambing season. And that's kind of where the word, you would find a lot of modern Irish speakers using Imbolc as their pronunciation, but you will find other people saying Imbolc. So a couple of things there. But I'm in the same situation in the US. It's just cold. It is definitely not the start of spring. And so it kind of loses some of the meaning, and you almost have to treat it almost as the promise of spring. Like, we're getting there, It's kind of around the same time as Groundhog Day. So there's that kind of, we're preparing for spring here where I live in the Midwest.
Yeah. Now, Mark, for you, it is spring, right?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I'm in the coastal zone in California, and we have more of a Mediterranean climate cycle where there are months of no rain at all, starting typically in about May and continuing on until like October or so, sometimes later. And then we have this concentration of an incredible amount of rain that happens November, December, January, February particularly, but then on into March and April. And so what happens is the grass and the hills all turn green in the wintertime. So the green growing time, the time of the new shoots and all that kind of stuff, that's really after a couple of solid storms in December, right? And by now the hills are emerald green. And right around now is when we have the first of our wildflowers coming up, the milkmaids, some of the other really early wildflowers. And so at that level, yes, it is spring. On the other hand, it is the wettest, darkest, or coldest anyway, time of the year. So I actually celebrate this holiday as River Rain, which is the festival of water. Water is so precious here because we're in the, yes, we're along the coast, so we get the coastal weather systems, but we're still in the arid US West. And water is very, very precious to us here. If we don't get enough water in the reservoirs and snowpack in the mountains, we're really in a problem come summertime. So to me, this is the festival that's all about celebrating things that water does for us and the miracle of water that creates life, right?
That's beautiful. Yeah, Hannah?
Well, I was going to say, I can definitely relate to that. Just for us, it would be a completely different time of year. I tend to think of Lunasa as a high monsoon for us, because we have a very rainy season that starts in late summer. We also have winter rains, but February is kind of a lull in rains for us. So I just love the concept of river rain, but it definitely wouldn't make sense to apply it to this particular time of year in my part of the country.
That's the same for us, yeah. But the monsoon season, that's another thing, yeah. So what, for everybody, I know, Mark, you were speaking to this a little bit. How has this holiday developed for you? What does it mean for you?
Well, I would say that it started out feeling like I was banging my head against a wall, because I was trying to shoehorn my experience of the natural world where I live into the box of what the traditional pagan wheel of the year wanted it to be, right? Casting seeds on the snow and the little shoots coming up above the snow. Well, we don't have any snow. And everything's very green, so there's lots of shoots. So, for years it was trying to figure out a way to make a logic for this. And then finally I came upon one. And that's why, in my book, I really encourage people to adapt the wheel of the year to fit what's happening in nature around them, because ultimately paganism is a land-based path. It's about our relationship with nature, not some concept of nature, but actual nature.
Mm. Nice.
So Bridget's Day, which is an alternative name, Saint Bridget.
Right.
Mhm.
You can kind of take it that Bridget is a Christianized goddess. In recent years, the Irish government decided that to say thank you to all of the people who made all the sacrifices over the pandemic, that they were going to introduce a new public holiday. And there was talk about when this public holiday should be. And finally, it was decided that Bridget's Day was going to be the new public holiday. So this is going to be the first year that it's an actual official public holiday. And for the last couple of years, it has been an occasion for the Irish government to promote Irish artists, Irish women.
Mhm.
So you'll see a lot of events around this day celebrating the contribution of Irish women to society.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, I think Bridget as a symbol is really interesting. In an Irish pantheon, there's not really, it's hard to kind of conceive of a pantheon because so many of the gods have so many overlapping symbolism related to them. They're not as, you can't just put them away the way you can with Greek or Roman gods.
Right.
And Bridget has a lot of things associated with her. And one of those things is that there is a group helping people who need abortions in the US to get those. And it's called the Bridget's Alliance.
Mhm.
And because there's a story about Bridget where she used her power to help a woman who was in need. And you can kind of go and look in that at their website. So I think the symbolism of Bridget is very important today, especially with the changes in politics in America. And so I think it's a really powerful symbol to feed into.
The symbol of Bridget resonates for me in the way that I celebrate the holiday because of the sacred well. She's associated with sacred waters, right? And so I incorporate some, like a Bridget's cross, in the focus that I build for celebrating river rain
Mm.
because of that association.
There's also often the forge and hearth component there,
Mhm.
which for us is nice because this is a time where the fire still is lit, and you have to have the fire lit this time of year, and it's that little spark of in the dark. And Michael, I loved what you were saying earlier about the in the belly part, because here it really does feel very like the year is still pregnant, right? That we're still, oh, it's coming, the birth of the year is coming, and we're going to find out what it is, and we're dreaming, but we don't quite have to get working at it yet. It's still in that kind of dreaming and planning stage before the spring comes and everything just starts happening all at once.
Mhm. Mhm. Susan, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts about this holiday and how you celebrate it?
Well, I pretty much the only classic thing that I do that really lines up with some of the more popular things to do is candles. This year we might actually try making some candles since that's something that we're going to need throughout the year anyway. So it's kind of something I'm trying to do at our house is kind of make more of the holidays tangible and active in that way, where it's like we're going to do something that's not just symbolic, but it actually has a practical purpose to kind of tie it back to folks who weren't just doing this for fun. It was really central to life. So that is something that we are going to try to do this year. Previously we've just sort of lit a lot of candles and we can be present with the time of year. But this year also, we garden a lot at our house, and this is the first year I'm going to start onion seeds indoors for transplanting. And I'm excited about that because it sort of does bring me to a place where spring is kind of on the way in that way, because onions, for anybody who doesn't know, you have to start those pretty much sooner than everything else if you're starting from seeds. And so that actually does line up closely enough with the holiday that I think we're going to do it as sort of a holiday celebration and say, okay, the garden's officially started. Spring started. We may be, doing this kind of in a cheating kind of way, but we're going to call it that. So, and we don't really eat or drink a whole lot of dairy. So we don't even have that connection with, the used milk and that part of the holiday. We've made Bridget crosses before, but we don't do a whole lot with deities either. So really it's more the practical stuff that we connect with and work with.
Mhm. Mhm.
So for me, last year was the first attempt that I really made to make Bridget's crosses and some things that are a little bit more specific to the traditional holiday celebration. And I did enjoy that experience. And for those of you who have never made a Bridget's cross, it's I think you can look up instructions online. It's a very fun activity worth trying. And I think that what it brought to my mind was this idea of weaving together things as a preparation for the roller coaster that sort of happened, at least in where I live. We get this beautiful spring weather very early on, and it just means that everything is very active. And so one of the things that came to me when I was doing that little activity is it felt like a form of preparation. Like you could think of weaving in a symbolic way of, these are the things that I want to try to get done when the roller coaster finally takes off. And so this is my preparation for it. So I think that this year I am going to try to focus on that idea of weaving things together, weaving intentions and plans, and try to build a ritual based in that.
I like that. That's beautiful.
So our local Unitarian Universalist church, we're actually going to be doing quite an elaborate Imbolc ritual that I'm leading. And it's going to involve creating an altar for Bridget, and we'll have a procession of items associated with her. Cream, water, oats, various other things. And we will just spend some time sharing music, talking about what Bridget means to us, and then we'll do some activities, traditional activities related to Bridget. So there's one thing called a Bridget's girdle, which is a straw rope in a circle. So a circular straw rope, and you go through that 3 times for good luck. So you have to step through it 3 times for good luck. We're also going to have like a Bridget's cross making station, and it's easier to make a 4-pointed cross, but I'm hoping to show people how to make a 3-pointed one as well. There's just you have to just tilt the items slightly to get that 3-pointed effect. And then we're also going to make some brat bridge, which means like Bridget's cloaks. So what you do is you take a rag and you leave it out on the night of Imbolc, and supposedly Bridget is meant to cross, in Ireland at least, she crosses the country and blesses all the rags, and then the rags become healing rags that you can use throughout the year for, if you have a sore throat, you can wrap it around your throat, or you can put on your head if you have a headache and things like that. So I think that's just a nice thing to do. I know a lot of people make like moon water, and I think this is kind of similar, just a symbolic connection to the day and something that people can bring home with them and continue the ritual at home that we started at the church. And then we're also going to make some butter in the same way that we did at Sun Tree, if some people remember that. We have a snake dance that that we do at the church, and we're gonna make the butter as we do the dance, and then we'll be able to eat the butter with some oatcakes, all symbolically associated with Bridget, and I think it should be a lot of fun.
Mm.
I want to go.
Yeah,
That sounds great.
Well, the dairy part is big for us, since we're bovine based, like our lifestyle and food and all of that, and some sheep and goat as well. But it's a time for us that we pay a lot of attention to the things that nourish us in life. So paying attention to those animals and kind of celebrating them and the dairy that comes from them and the meat and the furs and all of the things that we get from them. So one of the things we do is we'll go through and brush out any of the furs we have or clean things off and just be very mindful about all of the things that we're connected to, the big system that we're part of. So that's kind of where for us the dairy and cream component comes in.
Nice.
Mm.
Another aspect, excuse me, as you mentioned, Yucca, another aspect of Bridget is the forge and fire.
Mm-hmm.
And many years ago, I went to the hardware store and bought myself a small anvil and a 3-pound sledgehammer that we use at this time of year for in our rituals for river rain. And I have a stamp, and what we'll do, if I have it together enough to get metal slugs, I'll get metal slugs for the event. If not, I'll get a roll of nickels.
Mm-hmm.
But I have these metal stamps that can stamp symbols onto a metal disc. So you can use that stamp and the sledge on the anvil. And there is a very visceral, powerful, satisfying feeling to pounding a sledge on an anvil. It's, the ring, the sound that rings out, everything about it is just really powerful. And so what we do is we stamp these discs, and then we have a big bowl that's a wishing well, and we toss them in the wishing well with a wish for the coming year. So it's a way of sort of incorporating some of those traditional aspects into the celebration of water.
that's really cool, Mark.
I recommend hitting an anvil with a hammer. There's just something about it that feels really good.
Yeah. So are there any other little traditions like that people have that they'd like to share? Or things that you can think of that you'd like to do at some point?
Well, I've got a tradition that I've been doing throughout the wheel of the year, and I'm going to go into more detail in a video later. But I'm calling this my deer bone ritual, and it started on winter solstice of 2021. Basically, I have a sacred object, and my understanding of sacredness has a lot to do with basically just intention and an intention over time. And so I found a deer bone on a hike. And basically my idea has been that over time, and to observe important occasions and holidays, I change it with intention. So I make marks on it, and sometimes I remove it, marks. And I try to make, I try to do things that are sort of relevant to what's going on in my life at that time, and then with also an eye towards the traditional time of year. The most recent mark I have here, this is actually my 3-year-old niece made this little purple squiggle on here when she was visiting us for the winter solstice. And so what I've been doing with this deer bone, so I'm doing this for a couple of years now. So I'll make a mark with intention. on whichever observation of the wheel of the year it is. But I'll try to bring this with me to events and give people blessings with it. And it's been a very lovely way of it's been a way of building. It is a sacred object now, because when I look at it, I see all of these experiences and then all of the loving intention that has both gone into it and then been given to others in return. And it really has been making me extremely happy to do this. And so, yeah, I'll talk about that in a little more detail later, but that is definitely something that I'm looking forward to, coming up with a new little mark to make of some sort this year on Imbolc.
Mm.
Similar to that, well, different activities, but the other things that we as a family, and when I talk about my family, I mean my husband and my daughter, there's some things that we'll just always do if we can for all of the spokes of the wheel, is have a nice family dinner, incorporate gratitude into that as best we can. We try and do that on a regular basis anyway, but we'll put a little bit more emphasis on it, and we will try and do a nature walk if we can. If it's not, there's probably going to be snow for the winter holidays, but as long as it's not a blizzard outside, we'll go outside and just maybe take pieces of nature home or just observe, but just trying to be there and spend that time in nature.
Great.
Well, this has been wonderful. Is there anything else that people would like to share, or questions that we have for each other?
So one thing I didn't mention about the ritual we're going to be doing is that I'm going to be making a bridge, which is kind of a small, almost puppet version of Bridget,
Oh,
as part of our procession. So she'll be sitting front and center on the altar. And this is something that was done traditionally as well, where you'd have an effigy of Bridget and you'd do a procession in Ireland through the countryside. Sometimes you'd call it people's houses, and it would be kind of Bridget would bless the house and things like that, and there'd be a lot of other rituals associated with that. Also, there was a little controversy about choosing Bridget's Day as a public holiday. Atheist Ireland weren't too happy. They're an activist group in Ireland, because they were like, why are we doing another religious holiday? We're becoming a more secular country. Maybe we should be choosing a real woman to celebrate as well, rather than just symbolic or a Catholic saint. But yeah, Bridget's Day was chosen in the end. But I mean, I think I see it more as a celebration of Irish mythology rather than an endorsement of Catholicism. So
sure.
Because there's a lot that carries through from the pre-Christian traditions, right?
Exactly, and I think it's hard to know. I think there was actually a woman called Bridget, but I think a lot of the stories associated with her are taken from Irish mythology as well and blended together. I think there was definitely a goddess called Bridget, and there was probably a woman called Bridget, and they got merged together at some point.
Or maybe several women.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Yeah, very possibly. Well, it's always inspiring to me to hear how other folks are going to be celebrating the holidays, because it gives me more ideas, more stuff to add or things to change, or and I never knew how to pronounce Imbolc before. Is that right? Imbolc?
Yeah, Imbolc or Imbolc. Yeah.
Okay, Imbolc or Imbolc.
Imbolc.
Yeah.
It's almost like the C gets swallowed a little bit at the end, right?
Yeah, in contemporary Irish, it would be spelled with a G rather than a C. But yeah, that CG sound is it's right in the middle there between the two.
And then depends on your accent too, right? If you're from the north or the south.
Yeah, I think so. The thing as well is that it's I mean it's an old word and it's not really, it's been kind of rediscovered. Like St. Bridget's Day is La Fée la Bridge. So
Thank you, by the way, Michael, for giving us a pronunciation lesson. I mean, one of the things that I find a little awkward sometimes about delving into this stuff is that, yeah, when we use loan words from other cultures, I always worry about, wanting to celebrate that in the way that is reciprocal and is a relationship rather than just appropriating and misappropriating and twisting and warping other people's perfectly beautiful words and ideas. So I'm always good to, it's always good to hear that kind of information.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
people try to do their best, and often the only way you learn about this stuff is through reading, and you're not really, many people will never hear it spoken in a native context. So it's hard to, sometimes these things can be difficult.
And you only learn the one term for it. For example, I'm working with a lot of Welsh words as part of the Druidry organizations that I'm a part of, and just some of the research I'm doing in there. So it's got a totally different set of names in Welsh languages, which is pronounced probably badly by me, but Gwilvorwyn, which is different etymology, different thing. It's the same holiday, but that never even gets talked about. So it's all just taking from one culture when we don't necessarily need to, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been wonderful to hear everybody's different perspectives, and really appreciate everybody taking the time out of your day to come and join us and get to share this with everybody on the YouTube channel. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you.
Bye-bye.